The president today once again touting his crackdown on crime in Democratic-led cities.
Chicago, we've already made a lot of progress despite fighting from the government, but Chicago's doing great.
Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson is now refusing to play a video of DHS Secretary Kristi Noem at airports where she slams Democrats. Johnson calling the video propaganda.
4:47 a.m. Caracas, Venezuela. The city sleeps under a blanket of darkness and decay. Street lights flicker in the wealthy districts where regime officials live in mansions while ordinary citizens starve in crumbling apartment blocks. In the distance, sirens wail. But those sirens are cover, because descending on the Capitol at this exact moment are over 400 federal agents. FBI, DEA, ICE Special Operations Units, backed by Delta Force operators and U.S. Navy SEALs providing tactical overwatch from offshore vessels positioned in the Caribbean. This is not a raid, this is an eradication. The reinforced steel door beneath Miraflores Palace was designed to withstand explosives, small arms fire, and anything short of a bunker-buster missile. It took an FBI hostage rescue team breacher exactly 11 seconds to peel it open like a tin can using a shaped charge placed with surgical precision. The blast echoed through subterranean corridors. The shock wave rattled the foundations of Venezuela's seat of power. What lay beyond that door would provide the final proof. The government of Venezuela wasn't just complicit in narcotics trafficking. It was the logistical backbone of one of the largest cocaine distribution networks in the Western Hemisphere. 15 tons of pure cocaine, hidden in a fortified bunker, directly beneath the presidential palace. The largest single drug seizure in Latin American history. If you want the full truth about what happened that night, hit like so this story reaches more people. But the drugs were only part of the story. What FBI and DEA agents found in those underground chambers would expose the full scope of the Maduro regime's transformation from a failed socialist government into a full-fledged narco-state. This is not speculation. This is documented fact. This is the account of how a sitting head of state turned his nation into a cocaine empire, and how the combined forces of American law enforcement and military intelligence shattered that empire in a single coordinated strike. By the time the sun rose over Caracas on January 4, 2026, the world would know the truth. The fortress falls. It's 2:14 a.m., 3 hours before the bunker breach. Caracas is wrapped in fog. The wealthy neighborhoods of Altamira and Los Mercedes sit quiet. Gated communities, armed guards, luxury cars parked behind high walls. This is where the regime's inner circle lives. Ministers, generals, judges, all growing rich while their country collapses. Tonight, those walls won't protect them. At exactly 2:32 a.m., strike teams hit 6 high-value targets simultaneously across the capital. Flashbangs detonate in the dead of night. Doors are smashed off their hinges. Black-clad figures move like shadows through corridors of luxury penthouses, underground casinos, and cartel-controlled nightclubs that function as money-laundering fronts. In the Sabana Grande district, DEA agents breach a fortified mansion owned by a shell corporation traced back to the regime's inner circle. Inside, they find 2.3 tons of cocaine stacked floor to ceiling, industrial vacuum sealers, hydraulic presses, and $18 million in U.S. currency stuffed into duffel bags. Suspects try to run. Some make it to the back courtyard before being tackled by agents. Others freeze, hands up, staring down the barrels of AR-15s. One man tries to flush a cell phone down the toilet, later identified as a senior officer in Venezuela's National Guard. Agents retrieve it. That phone will become one of the most important pieces of evidence in the entire operation. 3 miles east in the industrial port zone of La Guaira, another team hits a warehouse complex registered under a fake agricultural export company. The warehouse is supposed to be storing coffee beans. Instead, agents find 4.1 tons of cocaine packaged in heat-sealed bricks, each brick stamped with a scorpion logo, the signature of a Colombian trafficking organization known as Los Scorpions, a cartel that had been operating with full protection from Venezuelan military intelligence. Comment exposed: if you believe corruption like this must be dragged into the light. But the biggest target isn't a warehouse. It isn't a mansion. It's Miraflores Palace itself. The presidential compound sits in the heart of Caracas, a sprawling complex of neoclassical buildings surrounded by high walls, guard towers, and layers of security. For years, it has been untouchable. Not anymore. At 4:02 a.m., Delta Force operators inserted by MH-60 Black Hawk helicopters fast rope onto the palace roof. Within minutes, they've neutralized the handful of guards on duty and secured the upper floors. The dictator and his wife are extracted from their private quarters, transferred to a U.S. Navy vessel waiting offshore. President Nicolás Maduro, in federal custody. But while Maduro is being placed in restraints, another phase of the mission is just beginning. beginning, because intelligence reports had indicated something else was hidden beneath Miraflores. Something that would prove beyond any doubt that Venezuela had become a narco-state. The bunker. By 4:30 a.m., the palace is secured. DEA Special Agent Miguel Ortega leads a specialized evidence collection team into the building. Accompanying him are FBI forensic technicians, IRS criminal investigators, DOJ prosecutors, and a security element composed of Marine raiders and FBI hostage rescue team operators. Their target, a secret bunker described by a cooperating witness, a mid-level Venezuelan army colonel who had been arrested in Colombia and agreed to talk rather than face a 20-year mandatory minimum sentence. The colonel had described the bunker in extraordinary detail, its location, its layout, its purpose. At first, some DEA supervisors had been skeptical. A cocaine storage facility directly beneath the presidential palace? It sounded too sensational, but the colonel provided details that could be verified. Satellite imagery showed suspicious construction activity around Miraflores in 2008 and 2009. CIA signals intelligence had picked up coded references to the vault and the basement, and a source inside Venezuelan military intelligence had confirmed the bunker's existence. Now it was time to see if the intelligence was accurate. The team moves through the palace corridors, past gilded portraits of Simón Bolívar, past marble floors and crystal chandeliers, until they reach a storage room adjacent to the main kitchen. The room looks ordinary, shelves stocked with canned goods, bottled water, cleaning supplies. But when an FBI technician uses a portable ground-penetrating radar unit to scan the walls, the device detects a large void space behind the northern wall. There's something back there. The false wall is constructed from reinforced concrete, cleverly painted to look like ordinary cinder blocks. Almost impossible to detect visually, but the radar doesn't lie. Agents locate a concealed access panel behind a row of industrial shelving units. The panel slides open to reveal a narrow stairwell descending into darkness. At the base of the stairs is a vault door, the kind of door you'd find protecting a bank's gold reserves. An FBI technical operations specialist attaches a bypass device to the lock's control panel, essentially hot-wiring the mechanism. The lock clicks open. The stairwell descends 40 feet below ground level. Concrete walls reinforced with steel rebar. LED lighting strips powered by an independent electrical system with battery backup. This isn't a hasty construction. This is a professionally engineered facility that cost millions of dollars to build. At the bottom of the stairs is another door, blast-resistant, designed to withstand military-grade explosives. The team uses a shaped charge to defeat it. The explosion is deafening. When the smoke clears, the door hangs awkwardly on its hinges. The locking mechanism completely destroyed. FBI operators push through, weapons raised, tactical lights cutting through the darkness. What they find takes their breath away. If this shocks you, hit like now. The bunker is vast, approximately 5,000 square feet, divided into multiple chambers. The main chamber is a storage area, and it is filled floor to ceiling with bricks of cocaine. Not bags, not bundles, bricks. Individually wrapped kilogram packages stacked on industrial metal shelving units that reach nearly to the ceiling. Each brick is wrapped in brown packing tape and stamped with a logo, a scorpion inside a circle. DEA agents recognize the marking immediately. Los Scorpions, the same Colombian cartel whose product was found in the La Guaira warehouse. The team begins the painstaking process of counting and documenting. Each brick is photographed in place before being moved. Each stack is measured and inventoried. DEA forensic chemists take samples from random packages for field testing, confirming the substance is cocaine, determining its purity. The results come back 92 to 95% pure, export-grade product. The numbers are staggering. Initial estimates, approximately 15,000 kilograms, 15 metric tons. At wholesale prices in the United States, that quantity has a street value exceeding $450 million. But the significance goes far beyond the dollar amount. 15 tons of cocaine doesn't just appear. It represents months of production across multiple laboratories. It represents the cultivation of thousands of acres of coca plants. It represents a sophisticated logistics network capable of moving multi-ton quantities of drugs across international borders without detection. And most importantly, it represents the involvement of state-level actors. People with the resources, authority, and protection to move that much contraband. Type yes if you're ready to see what they found next. In one corner of the chamber, investigators find something even more disturbing: manufacturing equipment. Industrial-grade scales capable of weighing packages up to 100 kilograms. Vacuum sealing machines used to package cocaine for maritime transport. Hydraulic presses used to compress cocaine powder into bricks. Chemicals used in cocaine processing. Hydrochloric acid, acetone, ether. This wasn't just a storage facility. It was an active processing and packaging operation, located directly beneath the office of Venezuela's president. The ledgers of a narco-state. In an adjacent chamber, the team finds records, not digital files which could be deleted remotely. Physical ledgers. Spiral-bound notebooks filled with handwritten entries documenting shipments, weights, destinations, and payments. The entries are coded, initials instead of full names, abbreviations instead of locations, but the pattern is unmistakable. One notebook dated July to December 2024 shows entries for over 200 individual shipments. Each entry includes a date, a weight typically between 50 and 500 kilograms, a destination code like MXV or DR3, and a payment amount in US dollars. A DEA analyst later estimates that the shipments documented in that single 6-month period represent over 40 tons of cocaine, with a total transaction value exceeding $800 million. But the notebooks aren't the most damning evidence. In a small office area within the bunker, investigators find a desktop computer that had been left running. The machine is password protected, but FBI cyber specialists bypass the security and access the hard drive. What they find is a treasure trove: email communications between Venezuelan military officers and Colombian cartel representatives, spreadsheets detailing cocaine shipments and profit distributions, scanned copies of bank transfer receipts showing payments from offshore accounts in Panama, the British Virgin Islands, and Cyprus, and most significantly, video files, security camera footage from inside the bunker itself, showing Venezuelan officials and military officers overseeing cocaine processing and packaging operations. In one video dated November 12, 2024, a man identified as Major General Hugo Ruiz appears in the bunker with several Colombian men. They examine samples of cocaine. They discuss logistics. They negotiate prices. The audio is clear enough that investigators can hear Ruiz offering to facilitate maritime transport from Venezuelan ports to Central America. Comment your reaction below. The implications are staggering. This isn't a rogue operation conducted by corrupt military officers acting independently. This is an organized, systematic enterprise operating with the knowledge and approval of Venezuela's highest-ranking government officials. Operation Scorpion's nest begins. By dawn, the intelligence picture is complete. Inside a secure command center aboard the USS Bataan, an amphibious assault ship positioned off the Venezuelan coast, federal agents, military intelligence officers, and DOJ prosecutors gather around a massive digital map. The map is covered with red markers. Each marker represents a cartel asset, a safe house, a processing lab, a money laundering front, or a corrupt official tied to the network. There are 47 markers in Venezuela alone, but the network doesn't stop at Venezuela's borders. It extends across the continent. Shell companies in Panama, money laundering operations in the Dominican Republic, cocaine distribution hubs in Honduras and Guatemala, maritime smuggling routes through the Caribbean, corrupt port officials in Mexico, and cartel cells operating inside the United States in Miami, Houston, New York, and Los Angeles. At 6:18 a.m., the order is given: Operation Scorpion's Nest, a coordinated multinational takedown. In Venezuela, over 1,200 federal agents and military operators launch simultaneous raids across 6 cities. In Maracaibo, DEA agents supported by U.S. Army Rangers storm a drug superlab hidden inside an industrial park. The lab is producing cocaine paste at an astonishing rate, over 200 kilograms per week. Agents seize 3.7 tons of cocaine, industrial chemical supplies, and arrest 22 cartel members. In Valencia, a convoy of armored SUVs carrying cartel enforcers is intercepted by a joint FBI-DEA strike team. The vehicles are found to contain 1.1 tons of cocaine, $4.3 million in cash, and a cache of weapons including AK-47s, AR-15s, and fragmentation grenades. In Puerto Cabello, Venezuela's primary port, U.S. Navy SEALs and DEA units board a cargo vessel flagged in Liberia but owned by a shell company linked to the regime. Hidden inside shipping containers marked as agricultural machinery are 6.8 tons of cocaine destined for Europe. In Ciudad Guayana near the Colombian border, agents discover a network of underground tunnels used to smuggle cocaine, weapons, and migrants between the two countries. The tunnels are sophisticated: reinforced concrete walls, ventilation systems, electric carts for transport. They've been in operation for at least 5 years. At the end of one tunnel, agents find a fortified compound where cartel members have been holding migrants for ransom. Classic human trafficking tactics used as revenue streams alongside narcotics. 17 hostages are rescued. 9 cartel operatives are arrested. Share this so more people understand how deep this corruption goes. By noon, the operation has seized over 27 tons of cocaine, $89 million in cash, 340 weapons, and arrested 104 individuals tied to the regime's narcotics network. But the raids in Venezuela are only the beginning. The web unravels. Back in the United States, IRS criminal investigators and FBI forensic accountants are tracing the money. The financial web is vast and complex. Shell companies within shell companies, offshore accounts in tax havens, real estate investments in Miami, Madrid, and Dubai, luxury purchases, yachts, private jets, exotic cars. It takes weeks to untangle, but the pattern becomes clear. President Maduro had personally authorized the creation of a parallel financial system designed to launder cocaine proceeds. His digital signature appears on encrypted documents found in the bunker's computer files. Documents authorizing the establishment of front companies. Documents approving cocaine shipments through military-controlled ports. Documents directing the transfer of drug profits into offshore accounts controlled by regime officials. This is not corruption. This is command-level collusion. This is not negligence. This is engineered treason. The man elected to lead Venezuela had instead sold it to the cartels, and the evidence proves it beyond any shadow of doubt. Among the most damaging files recovered are communications between President Maduro and General Alejandro Torres, the defense minister who had publicly called for resistance to American intervention. In one encrypted email dated September 2024, Torres writes, "The shipment is secured. Military transport authorized. No customs inspection. Route clear to La Guaira." Maduro replies, "Good. Ensure payment is transferred to the usual accounts. 15% to the general fund as discussed." These aren't coded messages open to interpretation. These are explicit instructions for drug trafficking. If you believe justice matters, comment justice below. Further analysis reveals that Maduro had used drug money to finance political campaigns, to pay off judges, to bribe military officers, and to fund propaganda operations designed to maintain his grip on power. He had turned the Venezuelan government into a criminal enterprise, and the criminal enterprise into a government. But the operation wasn't just about Venezuela. The network extended across Latin America and into global markets. DEA analysts working out of the Miami Field Division traced shipments to Europe, specifically to Spain, Italy, and the Netherlands, where cocaine was distributed through established networks controlled by Eastern European organized crime groups. They traced shipments to West Africa, specifically to Guinea-Bissau and Ghana, where cocaine was transshipped to European markets. They traced financial flows to Lebanon, where Hezbollah operatives were using cocaine profits to finance terrorism. And they traced connections to Iran. Among the most disturbing discoveries is evidence that the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps had provided technical assistance in building the bunker beneath Miraflores. Instruction manuals found in the bunker are written in Farsi with Spanish translations. Iranian engineers had helped design the facility's ventilation system, its security protocols, its communication infrastructure. Why would Iran help Venezuela build a cocaine bunker? Because Iran saw Venezuela as a strategic foothold in the Western Hemisphere, a base for intelligence operations, weapons smuggling, and anti-American activities. And Maduro had been willing to trade his nation's sovereignty for Iranian support and cartel cash. Corruption within. As investigators dig deeper into the seized records, another horrifying truth emerges. The narco-state hadn't just corrupted politicians and generals. It had infiltrated law enforcement at every level. Among the files recovered from the bunker are lists of Venezuelan police officers, National Guard members, border agents, and even judges who were on the cartel payroll. Over 300 names, each one receiving monthly payments ranging from $2,000 to $50,000 depending on their rank and the services they provided. Some had falsified patrol reports to allow drug convoys to pass through checkpoints undetected. Some had leaked raid schedules to cartel operatives, allowing them to move product or flee before arrests could be made. Some had actively participated in drug trafficking, using their badges and uniforms as cover. And some had murdered whistleblowers, fellow officers who had tried to report corruption. Hit subscribe so you don't miss what happens next in this investigation. In one particularly chilling case, investigators find evidence that a senior police commander in Caracas had ordered the assassination of 3 honest officers who had stumbled upon a cartel safe house during a routine patrol. The officers were found dead in their patrol car 2 days later, officially ruled a gang-related shooting. But the files in the bunker tell a different story. The commander had sent an encrypted message to a cartel enforcer. Problem at Sector 7. 3 badges saw too much. Handle it quietly. 48 hours later, those 3 officers were dead. federal agents make a priority of arresting the corrupt officials. Over 70 Venezuelan police officers and military personnel are taken into custody during the raids. Some resist. One former colonel tries to flee through a back window when agents breach his home. He's tackled in the alley behind his house, found carrying $83,000 in cash and a false passport. Another judge attempts to destroy evidence, burning documents in a fireplace when FBI agents arrive. The agents extinguish the fire and recover partially burned ledgers showing payments from cartel front companies. One officer, a 15-year veteran, breaks down during interrogation. "I thought I was serving my country," he says. "Now I find out I was working for a cartel." The betrayal runs deep, and the damage spreads through every institution. When police become criminals, when judges take bribes, when generals traffic drugs, the line between law and crime is erased. Trust inside institutions weakens. Citizens lose faith, and the criminal organizations grow stronger. Operation Scorpion's Nest wasn't just about seizing cocaine. It was about restoring the rule of law. Comment exposed if you want more people to see this story. The Hemispheric Crisis. As the days pass, the full scale of the operation becomes clear. This wasn't just a Venezuelan problem. This was a hemispheric crisis. The narco-state that President Maduro had built didn't respect borders. It had turned Venezuela into the logistical hub for cocaine distribution across the Western Hemisphere. At its peak, the network was moving over 300 tons of cocaine per year. To put that in perspective, that's enough cocaine to supply every major city in the United States for months. It was enough to fuel addiction epidemics in Europe, Africa, and Asia. It was enough to generate over $12 billion in annual revenue, money that flowed back into the regime's coffers, into cartel bank accounts, and into the pockets of corrupt officials across a dozen countries. The network had corrupted officials in Colombia, Panama, Honduras, Guatemala, Mexico, and even the United States. In Miami, federal agents arrest a port official who had accepted $200,000 in bribes to allow containers filled with cocaine to pass through customs without inspection. In Houston, they arrest a logistics company owner who had provided trucks and drivers to transport cocaine from the border to distribution hubs in Dallas and Atlanta. In New York, they arrest a money launderer who had used a chain of check cashing stores and currency exchange businesses to launder over $80 million in drug proceeds. But perhaps the most chilling discovery is a file found on President Maduro's personal computer. A file labeled Proyecto Eclipse. Project Eclipse. The file contains a long-term strategic plan, not to hide the regime's drug trafficking, but to institutionalize it. The plan called for the creation of a permanent narco-state infrastructure that could outlast any one president or administration. It called for the establishment of cartel-controlled agricultural zones where coca cultivation would be protected by the military. It called for the construction of additional underground bunkers and drug super labs across the country. It called for the expansion of maritime smuggling routes and the purchase of submarines and semi-submersibles for transporting cocaine. It called for the creation of a shadow government, an invisible command structure that would continue to operate even if the official government collapsed. And it called for the use of drug money to finance a new political movement across Latin America, one that would spread the model of the narco-state to other countries. If you believe corruption like this must be stopped, share this video now. In other words, Maduro hadn't just built a criminal empire, he had built a blueprint for exporting it. The realization is chilling. If the American operation had not happened, if the bunker had not been discovered, Project Eclipse would have continued, and the poison would have spread. The reckoning. By the end of January 2026, President Nicolás Maduro and 14 of his top officials are in federal custody, awaiting trial in the Southern District of New York. The charges are sweeping: narco-terrorism, conspiracy to import cocaine into the United States, conspiracy to distribute 5 kilograms or more of cocaine, use of weapons in furtherance of drug trafficking crimes, money laundering, racketeering, and in the case of President Maduro, violation of the Kingpin Act, which allows the U.S. government to prosecute foreign drug traffickers as if they were leaders of criminal organizations. The penalties are severe. Narco-terrorism alone carries a mandatory minimum sentence of 20 years and a maximum of life in federal prison. When combined with the other charges, Maduro is facing multiple life sentences. There will be no plea deal. There will be no negotiated settlement. The evidence is too strong. The crimes too severe. Federal prosecutors estimate that Maduro's network was responsible for importing over 1,200 tons of cocaine into the United States between 2015 and 2025. That cocaine contributed to tens of thousands of overdose deaths. It fueled gang violence in American cities. It destroyed families and communities. and it enriched a dictator and his cronies to the tune of billions of dollars. The trial, when it happens, will be one of the largest and most significant narcotics prosecutions in history. But the legal case is only part of the reckoning. In Venezuela, the fall of the Maduro regime has created a power vacuum. Interim leaders supported by the democratic opposition and an international coalition are working to rebuild the country's institutions. It will take years, perhaps decades, but for the first time in a generation, there is hope. In the United States, the fentanyl crisis continues, but the takedown of the Venezuelan network has disrupted a major supply chain. DEA officials estimate that the operation has removed 15% of the cocaine supply to the US market in a single blow. It's not enough, but it's a start. The cost of silence. Here's the truth that no one wants to say out loud. Power doesn't always need violence to survive. Sometimes it only needs silence. Silence from officials who know what's happening but say nothing. Silence from officers who see corruption but look away. Silence from citizens who suspect the truth but are too afraid to speak. President Maduro built his empire on silence. And for years, that silence protected him. But silence has a cost. Hit like if you believe justice is worth fighting for.